if you kind of looked at what are the biggest barriers to employment for a person with disability?
So I would say that there are three big barriers. The first one is the fear and stigma that's still associated with disability. And when I say fear and stigma, I mean two different things. When I say fear, I really mean fear of doing it wrong. Whenever we're interacting with someone who's different from us and it's the first time, we're very uncomfortable, not sure what to do, not sure how to ask, don't want to make people uncomfortable. So we avoid those situations. Instead of embracing them and figuring out how to do it right, we avoid it. And so that fear of mucking it up, it is huge. And the stigma is really related to how we think about people with disabilities as humans, right? So there is always kind of this thought process in the back of your head that says, my gosh, if a person with a disability can do my job or can do this job, or like as an able-bodied person, what should I be doing? What should I have accomplished? And that's something that we call ableism, right? And it's the belief that the able body is superior to a different body. And we have to really focus on getting those ableist thoughts out of our head and then being able to put action behind them. My favorite way to say it is it's the yeah, but, right? We could hire people with disabilities, but, right? And so the fear and stigma is a big, big piece of it. And just understanding, that's why I love to talk about the intersections and how big our communities are, right? There are like 31 million working age adults with disabilities in the United States right now. And a lot of us have invisible disabilities. So if we can get past some of that fear and stigma and also get past the ableist ideas that we should be doing more if a person with a disability can be a part of our organization, right? It's not a reflection of you, we're equals. And the other biggest thing, and I'm sure every recruiter can attest to that, is the technology and the systems and the process, right? So the data management techniques, the processes that are a part of all of these vendor systems that get you from how do I learn about a job to how do I get to that interview to how do I get to my first day of onboarding are built to exclude, right? And there's, I'm not saying that as, I might be saying it as a negative, but it's meant to whittle down the funnel. It's not meant to provide opportunity, right? Because the way that we look at hiring in the United States versus a lot of other countries is how do we mitigate our risk? How do we do it in the fastest way? And how do we make sure that we have the least amount of kind of human interaction? And so whenever we're helping a company start to develop a strategy around hiring, you have to have those systems, right? The government says you have to have them. The sheer volume that we're dealing with it makes it necessary, right? And so many times when you've seen like a disability hiring initiative from, back in the olden days, they would want people to not have to apply to the job and to be in a separate system or to be, kind of really white glove through the system or through the process without necessarily being on the system of record. And the biggest unlock that we've had at Disability Solutions in terms of how to have scalable, replicatable impact is we know that person, that candidate needs to live in your system of record. But we also know that that's where we have the opportunity to create different paths into the hiring manager interview, into getting the interview scheduled, and really very simple things that we recommend within an applicant tracking system, within how you're advertising, and how you're outreaching to job seekers, how you're onboarding them. We can deal with a lot of that within the existing technology. And that is the way companies really, when they're thinking about how do I design for talent with disabilities, one, you have all the data in your database, right? You have so much data to learn about where qualified candidates are falling out. And then you can decide, how do I create opportunities within those data processes and those vendor management techniques, or data management techniques, excuse me. And that really, really makes the biggest difference. The most common accommodation that we help companies provide as disability solutions is when we create more accessible, more inclusive talent funnels. And we make sure that people with disabilities have the opportunity to get in front of a hiring manager who has been trained and who understands that by saying hiring the most qualified person, that doesn't mean that you're not considering a person with a disability, right? People with disabilities are just as qualified, just as available, but they're not getting through to that interview stage. And once we can get them through to that interview stage and get a hiring manager ready to be inclusive, that takes care of so much. And really, kind of the last thing is that hiring manager piece, or the recruiter interview. People, again, they're very uncomfortable, but they also, again, as a way that we've managed risk as organizations, we have, the behavior guides, the star-based behavior interviews. We have very kind of strict parameters a lot of times in which we can interview, or what our expectations are. And the reality is that most people, including people with disabilities, don't necessarily shine in star-based behavior, sitting down and talking. Some of us are very visual learners. We learn by doing, we learn by seeing, not necessarily just talking through it. And that is a way that hiring managers, recruiters, sourcers can start to engage people and understand that the different ways that people learn also create additional opportunity to find out someone's skill and their value based on changing up the way that we interview and engage them.
No, I think what you just talked about is really critical.